Welcome to Air Quotes and Margin Notes, the show where D20s decide what we talk about. Last week, we rolled 2 sets of D20s each and mish-mashed those topics together. You rolled...
Economics and board games.
Okay, I rolled... Wait, what did I roll? Engineering and technology.
Engineering and technology.
Did all this research about it.
I forgot what you rolled, though. You just said it.
Yeah, so the first thing that we do, we decided this last week, is we roll a D6 to decide who goes first. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if we decided that it's highest or 1 through 3 versus 4 through 6.
We get to decide. We made the show.
So what do we want to do?
I think we should roll... I think we should just play highest wins.
Highest wins?
Yeah.
I think that's what we did last week, too.
I think it is, yeah. So many options. Let's roll this guy.
Okay, highest? That's a D8.
D8? Who goes first? I think you rolled first last time.
Yeah, you roll first.
Okay. I don't know which one I want, so I'm not sure.
Oh, you got a 7?
Oh, I got 7.
You went first last week, too, didn't you?
Yeah, I did go last week. Oh, no, what if I go first every time?
I'm hoping for an 8. I got 5. Oh, no. Okay, you go first.
I go first. Buckle up. I'm ready for this. Board game and economics. So what do you think I did my report on?
It's so hard because I want to say what I would do, which is not what you would do.
Probably.
I think you tried to find the crunchiest economics board game that you could find. Probably something like that.
That's a good guess. That's not what I did. I put a lot of work into trying to not do what I thought was the expected version. So we'll see if that paid off or not. I don't know. Okay, so I didn't quite know where to go with this, but at first I did think like an economics board game, or I thought you could go the economics of board games. And I looked into I looked at like what are the highest funded games on Kickstarter and what's the system like for board gaming. I found a ton of videos. So I was like, it's kind of been covered. So I was trying to find a different route, which both of those could be interesting. It's not that they're not, but instead what I decided was to try and get into an economist's head. So like when I was young, I skateboarded. And when you skateboard, everything you look at is an obstacle that you could try to do something on. And I just thought, I think everybody does that. I'm sure every engineer crosses a bridge and goes, here, that's an interesting way to do that. What would I have done? So I just thought like, what would an economist do if he looked at board games? Like what would his brain do? And I don't know, I didn't check with any economists, so this might not be true, but I thought you would look at the economic system of games. In the games, not of the games. What I came to was, this is what I think an economist would see when they saw a board game. They would go, that's an interesting economic system because it either mirrors a real life system or it doesn't. And then you would break down like, what's the system of trade? What's the resource collection like? I think every game has that in some way. Like, I guess everyone doesn't. We played Ticket to Ride. There's not really an economic system in that exactly. There probably is a way to twist it where there is, but so there are some outliers. I also saw a few that were cool that don't use a traditional system. There's one called Chinatown that you basically just barter and swindle and like try to get people to do stuff. So there's not really like a system. So just to lay the groundwork, we're in the U.S. and the U.S. is a mixed market economy. It's free market. There's government oversight, but we're generally used to, voluntary transactions and supply and demand. A lot of games use that system. There's one called Container. I didn't really know that one, but Brass Birmingham is a big one. Catan is, although I think there's elements of other things in that. So what I thought I would do is look at some of the games I love and see what their system is and see what it mirrors in actual real life. And I have a few, but I'll end on the one I wanted to say the most about because it's one of our favorites. So I started with BattleTech because I just always do. BattleTech's not easy to define their system, and it makes sense because there's planets, there's mercenaries, there's the inner sphere, there's a lot of like ways there could be. But interestingly, they do have their own system they have named, and it's called Fasonomics. I didn't look super into it because it's made up for the game, I believe. I think it's based on some of the factories that they had early on or something, and like they were running the show. Anyway, the thing I read about it the most is if you read into it, it falls apart. But if you do read into it a little bit, which I spent, a little bit on it, it seems like it's tied to neo-feudalism and space I knew this was going to be a hard word to say when I put it down. It ties into space mercantilism, which is like mercenary terms, which is like you offer them out for a job and they take it or they don't. And then a command economy, which I think a lot of it is based on playing the video game, especially like it's a command economy. So let me break those down. Neo-feudalism is a system where rights and legal protections for everyday people and nobility are not equal, and people tend to be ruled by a small but powerful class. And from what I read, I think there's not really a middle class. You either have or you don't. A command economy is one where a central authority controls all the aspects of production and pricing and distribution. And the former Soviet Union was considered a large-scale command economy. So those are kind of the ones it pulls from. But BattleTech runs on C-bills, and a lot of the money going around goes into like, head-kicking mechs, which some could argue is not super beneficial to everyday people trying to make a life. But, you get head-kicking mechs out of it. So, okay. So, and then mercantilism, I'm not quite sure on that. I refuse to look it up. But that is where you see your economic gain as a zero-sum game. You basically only think you can prosper if others fail, and you're basically taking and not giving. And space mercantilism is that in space, which I think is cool. So that was my first one. So the second game I looked at, which is was a little harder to break down, but we've been playing Valheim some. Prem and I play it, and even like when the first time we played it, I thought it's an interesting system for resources and coins. So I didn't think I could place it at first on an economic thing. But basically, you're receiving things like resources, potions, coins, and you are using them to purchase. So you're trading for armor and weapons. You're buying, I don't know if you're buying food, but you're using your food to make resources. And then you make furniture and tables to get upgrades in the game. You also loot chests. And if I'm not mistaken, you get items from defeating enemies. And then if you don't count Haldor, there's not really a market to speak of. It's literally just Haldor. I think this is your only market. So there's not a production chain. There's not really a market. But if you consider that Haldor could be part of the community, which I don't know why it wouldn't be, then it's a closed system, or at least it implies that it's a closed system. And then the other thing that's kind of strange on it is a lot of the items like just come from the game. You don't really have like an entity giving them to you. And then also it's like you're playing cooperatively. All the resources are coming from and going into the same pot. So there's no trade between players. There is trade between Haldor, but so my first guess was to call it a subsistence economy, which is where the directive is like having sufficient food, clothing, shelter to sustain your life and sustain your family. And not specifically like maintaining a market. It doesn't quite fit. So I would call it a mixed economy because there's other factors in there that don't quite fit subsistence. But I did look into it after I came to that conclusion. After I came to that wild guess, because I'm not an economist. If you look up Vikings, they tended to be a mixed economy. So I think that's what I would go with. And then I wanted to throw this one in there. This is not my main point, but Prem loves Cozy Stickerville, and I thought it's kind of interesting because if you're like starting play, it feels like it's a self-sustaining system, but I think you'd have to label it as a mixed economy. And I think the interesting part of it is as you play the game, you can kind of decide whether you want to be self-sustaining or if you want to bring in bigger businesses and a more capitalistic system, which is interesting to like let you steer the path a little bit. Okay, so my main topic, Prem and I are avid Everdell players. We play it a lot. We know it really well. And I'm mainly talking about the base game on this. We only have a couple of the expansions, so I didn't want to make this like overarching. So for those that don't know, Everdell is you live in a forest and your job is to place workers. You gain resources. Your workers can mine stone, collect twigs and berries, and refine resin. You also do earn coins. But I'm going to come back to that part. All of this is an effort to basically build a city with the highest point value. And I would argue, playing Everdell, you do that in a closed system. There's no outside trade, all the resources and coins. I mean, it's hard to say with the coins. They don't really say where those come from or who smiths them. But generally speaking, all the resources come from in the forest that you're in Everdell. There are 4 cities, so there's like arguments to be made. And then everything is in a pot. You do have your own money, but it all goes into and comes out of the same pot as everybody else. There's no wood coming from out of town. You're not collecting berries from the next town over. So to me, I would consider it a closed system. And there's not really a trade mechanic. You don't trade with other players. There's a couple times where you give them something, but it's usually a gift or a donation, and it's not a purchase. The few exceptions where you get coins or where you use coins to buy something, it's rare in the game, but there is the clock tower, which I would consider the clock tower and the chapel. You both can pay a coin to do something. I think it feels more like a donation or a lending procedure. It doesn't feel like, it's not a capitalistic, like, here's a thing for a thing. It doesn't feel like that, especially if it's a closed loop system, because what you're doing is like helping the community, which is totally different from buying something. So that's where I came to on it. I don't think those things affect my point. So the coins, you do earn them, you don't spend them, you don't trade them. They only go towards your points. And there's no trade system. I'm just reiterating here. If you visit another player's city, you don't pay them to stay in their hotel for a season. It only negatively affects them. So that's not a trade system. That ends up being a zero-sum game as well, where if I go stay in your city, you lose a space, I gain whatever ability that card gave me, and I make out better. So it's kind of that. That proves my point. There's no trade system. We can at least agree that in the game's reality, it's a closed system.
That may change with this new one with the journeys, right? Because the journeys, you go out.
Yeah, it could change. So this is base game. So looking at all of that, putting it all together, faking like I'm an economist, the conclusion I came to is Everdell functions as an autarky, which is defined as a self-sustaining system without outside trade, which I'm going to put a couple notes here in case people are like, that's not what that is. There's a spelling thing. So just a note, it sounds the same as an autocracy in a way, like maybe a different form of it. It's not. An autocracy is power concentrated into an unquestionable government. There's also, I'm talking about autarky with a KY at the end, which is completely different from an autarky with CHY at the end. The one with the K is the one I'm talking about for Everdell. The other one's not related. So from now on, if I say autarky, it's the one with the KY. A closed loop society with no trade. Autarkies evolve when a society isolates itself or when it reverts to localized production because it lacks excess production to trade with the outside world. The hope when they do this is to reduce economic, political, and cultural influences from the outside world. But some economists, actual ones, argue that the negative effects are lack of economic growth and welfare. I didn't study that part. I just studied the Everdell part. But it did really make me wonder, like, what's going on in the Everdell world outside of Everdell that they decided they had to be a closed loop system. I mean, probably that they only have 20 stones between all the players. I mean, that would do it.
We don't have enough to share.
We cannot share these with anyone. We have 20 berries to feed all of us. So yeah, I mean, it kind of makes sense, I guess. And you know, if you're an economist and you happen to be watching this, weigh in, because I don't know. So I went that route, and I thought that was interesting. But then I thought, what if I'm wrong? What if there's more layers to peel back on Everdell that I wasn't thinking about? Because yes, if you only look at the fantasy world, ignore the players, yes, it's an autarky. But I have two more arguments against it.
I see where you're going.
So the first issue is that there are kings and queens in the game. That causes a problem. It can't be an autarky if it has I don't think it can. If it has maybe it can. I don't think it can be an autarky if it has a king and a queen. But we'll let people that know better tell us, or if you want to tell me after this. That could be a point towards a monarchy. You have little mice cosplaying little, and I'm not trying to be mean, but they are cosplaying it because I have a reason.
That is actually kind of mean.
It's kind of mean, but if you look at it, they aren't required to be in your city. You don't have to have a king and queen. And when you do have them, all you do is get points for the end of the game. They do not help the workers. They do not control the workers. So I think they're just figureheads. I don't think that they're doing anything. There's a benefit to having a king and queen, but that doesn't mean they're in charge. Then what's the third option? The third option to me is you as the player are playing an actual role. And there's nothing in the book about this. This is if you step outside and watch it from the outside. You are making all the decisions. You're telling your workers where to go. You're telling them what to build. You're telling who can go to different hotels. You're telling what resources to get and what goes into your city. So my argument for that is that Everdell is a command economy, and you are an evil government. So with all the players taking the role, like, here's how it makes sense. If all the players are taking the role of entities that are calling all of the shots, it's a command economy, and you're the commander. Your poor little mice and squirrels have only enough to get by, because that's what happens in a command economy.
And sometimes you let a mouse pretend like he's king.
Yeah, you be the king. Yeah, you just get some points for the end of the game. So here's some symptoms of a command economy that I thought fit Everdell. So pervasive shortages is a big thing, and surpluses, because the central planner is a person, and they're setting all the prices and quotas, and they're not relying on supply and demand, so oftentimes they miscalculate and get it wrong. That sounds exactly like what happens in Everdell. You end up with too many resources for the wrong thing, or you end up with all these things you want to play in your city and you don't have the resources for it. So it fits to me. The other thing is resource misallocation, where you basically, whoever's in charge of prioritizing sometimes they put social objectives over consumers, which can cause inefficiencies in the way labor and resources are used. That sounds like an Everdell move to me. All this boils down to whether you see the players as an actual part of the game or merely a guiding force, like basically role-playing each of the characters as they take a turn with that character. So it kind of depends on which route you go with that. So yeah. Let me know what you think. Autocracy or command economy. So I thought just at the end of this, just to wrap it up, I'd throw in a couple more economic ideas that I learned, because I've never even Googled economy before. So I learned a lot. But these kind of applied to Everdell and other games. But the first one is scarcity, which obviously is an Everdell thing. Technically, the Everdell version is relative scarcity, because
There is availability.
When
you pay, you're paying back into the same pot that others are taken from.
Yeah. If it was a full scarcity, which I think it's called, I can't remember the other version, but it'd be like if you had a painting by an old master that's dead now, like you could not replace that. So that would be different.
Yeah.
So yeah, in the game, you're constantly fighting the battle of like, I have these cards, I want to play them in my city, but I can't get enough resources for that, which leads to the strategy of the game and the fun of the game. So you kind of choose what you think is the best thing to spend your resources on. You force your workers to agree with you, and then you play. And you hope you made the right choice. So, and an interesting idea I read about in relation to that is in a scarcity system, the value of an item is not actually determined by what you pay for it. It's determined by what you gave up, what your second choice was to get it. So if you have an Everwall and a queen, and you decide to play that queen, the actual value of that queen is what you gave up on the Everwall. So the queen's worth the Everwall. I don't really understand how that works in the real world, but maybe you can tell me.
Yeah.
But I thought it was an interesting thing that fit Everdell. So the last little economic fact I'll end on is, if in fact the game has coins and you are not a participant, you're merely role playing as the cards, and there's no trade system for the coins and they have no value, then it would be considered a hoarding group, because they're basically like keeping all of it and you don't pay back in. So those don't go back into the community. You're literally just hoarding coins. Now, if it is a command economy, then you're getting the coins. Something's happening after the curtains close. So who knows what that is. But.
That was so interesting.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it is interesting to think about game systems, especially like in cozy games like that, right? Because there's like maybe this like underlying assumption that it is a more chummy system, but a command economy and a cozy game is kind of a crazy concept, right?
Yeah, it is kind of funny. I don't know. I don't think they did that on purpose, but
no.
But yeah, I don't know. I looked into others. Like D&D is not a board game, but that economy is interesting. It's a lot of like, people scraping by to have a hut and food to feed their family, and then a bunch of adventurers with $1 billion in magic items, and there's a lot of weird inflation things happening. Not a board game, so I didn't talk about it.
Well, I think what you were saying about the scarcity, so like scarcity really is the thing that you gave up to get the thing that is scarce. I think a good example of that would be like toilet paper in the pandemic, right? So like there was a relative scarcity on toilet paper. It did exist. They were creating more, but there was not a lot of it on the market. And so if you decided to purchase toilet paper over steaks, the cost of the toilet paper would be the steaks.
Oh, interesting. That does make sense, because if you were the creator of steaks, if you invented steak and you saw that toilet paper was more important to people,
you'd have to lower your price.
Yeah, the value would like meet. So yeah, that does make sense in the real world. Okay.
Yeah, or like another example would be like, I don't know, I'm sure that we've done this, but like, we like go out to eat and it's not as good as we wanted. And we're like, we could have bought a board game for that, right? We're comparing it to our second option.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So people kind of think in those terms all the time, but because like if you don't have an economist hat on, which I'm not either, but I do find it interesting.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, you watch that one guy that does like 8-hour economy videos.
Yes, I love that guy. Well, actually, I was actually going to talk about a different creator that makes really long form content, William C. Fox, who put out a video recently called How Every Fascism Died, or some version of that. And he was talking about Germany after World War I and their response to it. And Hitler's rise to power, him and the government, he talks a lot about how it was really the government. I think it's kind of funny in there. He talks about how Hitler was inherently lazy. Like, he didn't want to go to meetings. He slept in. He was just a kind of a lazy guy, and all this stuff is. A lot. Did you know that? Yeah. Yeah. But like, people ascribe him as like making these big decisions, and really he said things, and people were like had to interpret what he meant by that.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like that works for people. It's like, say less and people will like fill in the blanks. Artwork kind of works that way sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, but anyway, so he was not saying that obviously.
Hitler bad.
Yeah, Hitler bad, Hitler not off the hook.
No.
But so he was talking about how in the transition between World War I and World War II, leaders in the German government had this decision that they needed to produce everything in-house. And so there were mandates that imports couldn't happen, and they had to decide how to make all of their goods themselves, right? They wanted to become an autarky. They wanted to be a closed loop system where everything that they needed was inside of their own walls. They wanted to be the KY version.
Yeah. But if they had a big leader in charge.
But what I was going to say is that was like the idealized version of it, right? And they realized that like people can't do that. The world can't do that. You can't go back to be like a closed loop system once you have started trading with other countries. And especially too, like we just don't have access to all of the things that other countries have, right? Like we're seeing that a lot in conversations about like lithium and cobalt right now, right? Where there's a lot of really questionable and bad things happening because countries have them and other countries want them.
Right.
But anyway, so what they said was, we want to be we have everything inside version, and then realized that they couldn't, and they immediately ran into issues with the welfare of their citizens and economic collapse, basically. And so the decision to start trying to expand the borders, to try to get more land, was to try to combat that, because they didn't want to say that their decision to be closed loop was the bad decision. Because then that would be like admitting that they weren't the best or whatever.
Yeah. Huh.
So it's just interesting too, because even in the autarky where you're like, well, we're just a little closed loop system, there's still like this underlying theme of like chaos happening.
Yeah, yeah, I did see, I don't remember if it was autarky or autarky, but one of them a big...
Autarky or autarky?
Thank you. One of them a big symptom was like black markets pop up.
Yeah.
And a lot of like under the veil stuff happens.
Well, I think I was telling you, like in that William C. Fox video, he was talking about how in pre-World War II Germany and then World War II Germany, there was a mandate that you couldn't leave your job, you couldn't get a promotion, and you couldn't change jobs without getting like something written by a state official. And so because you couldn't get promotions and you couldn't get fired, people just like weren't showing up for work. And so if you did show up for work a bunch, like employers would find a way to like pay you under the table.
I think you told me about this, yeah.
Yeah, because they like wanted to incentivize their workers to keep showing up, because they had this mandate from the government to produce everything in-house, but they couldn't get their people to show up for work. Yeah. Right? So I also think too, like North Korea is a really interesting version.
Yeah, and North Korea is considered an autocracy.
Yeah, because it's like, it's such a closed loop system. And we know from what little insight we have, the terrible welfare of most of the people who live there, right? Like 99% of the population does not have access to the bare necessities.
Yeah.
So I think what we're saying is it's whether it's an autarky, or a command economy, Everdell economically is inherently a bad system.
I mean, yeah.
For the economics of the people.
Yeah, for the workers, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love Everdell, but
I love Everdell.
But yeah, you gotta decide whether you're a little forest of creatures that don't want access to the outside world, or you're in charge of those and you're a mean leader.
Yeah, what's the mythology there, right?
Yeah.
Next time we play, which one are you going to pretend? Are you going to pretend you are the commander?
It's interesting. I think I play it from a role-playing perspective where when I'm playing a card, I'm the character. So that would be an autarky version.
I play it like a command economy. They don't get a say. I'm not consulting with them about if they want to get twigs or not. They're going to get twigs.
Yeah, that's right.
That was really interesting. I like that.
Thank you.
I kind of hope you roll it again so you can do more games.
I know. I did feel like I tried to do a few other games, and I looked at like Catan, because I think there is more to it than just being a mixed economy.
I rolled engineering and technology.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you think I went?
I don't have a clue. I wonder if you maybe thought about like how engineering and technology, what it does to a society, maybe.
Oh, that would be interesting. I want a do-over. That sounds more interesting.
No. I'm trying to think how else your brain would go with it. I'm not sure. Because there's so many ways you could go with that. Because everything is engineering and technology.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here's what I put together.
Okay. Yeah. I'm excited to hear it.
So this time I rolled engineering and technology. As we just talked about, I think that's probably the broadest mishmash possible of all the topics. Mm-hmm. So from my perspective, my first task was to find the focus. Where and how did I want to spend my energy, since basically everything in engineering is tied to technology, and a lot of technology has to do with some sort of engineering. I thought I could do engineering technology over time, but that would take like 5 hours and I wouldn't even get through 1% of it. I mean, do I start at the arch, first designed by Mesopotamians over 4,000 years ago? Or do I start with more modern technologies, like the phone? I feel like I could probably spend an hour alone on the dispute over the patent for the telephone. I won't, but I would like to say that we all should know Antonio Santi Giuseppe Meucci's name instead of Alexander Graham Bell. There is a great entry in the American Library of Congress about this, if you're curious. But since I didn't really want to go that direction, I thought I could do recent engineering technology breakthroughs. And then I looked it up, and engineering is currently going through an AI revolution, and I didn't really find that interesting. For the record, I'm firmly in the Luddites against AI train, so if I'm going to spend time talking about AI, it's not going to be in that context. And interestingly, when I looked up engineering technology news specifically, I just found a lot of it was like PR announcements from universities announcing new degrees. Weird.
Interesting.
So where to then? Engineering is well known for having 5 core branches: industrial, civil, electrical, mechanical, and chemical. But there are also offshoots that don't fit nicely into these, like software engineering and biomedical engineering and nuclear engineering. So I thought I could try to find technologies in each of these branches. But once again, that felt too broad, right? Like every one of those branches also has branches. I finally realized that I didn't quite understand the difference between engineering and technology. Isn't a phone, which is the result of electrical, mechanical, and nowadays software engineering, also a technology? So I thought maybe I would go a little bit more basic.
Yeah.
In school, they have STEM programs and STEM scholarships and STEM units and STEM after-school activities. I was in a bunch of those as a kid. I was in Science Olympiad and Mathletes and Odyssey of the Mind. And yet when I got to high school, my mom said I shouldn't join the chess club because it was too nerdy. She made me into the nerd. Anyways, STEM, which if you're not familiar, stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics, was coined by the United States National Science Foundation, or NSF, in 2001. Actually, Britannica Online notes that it was a biologist named Judith Romilly, who was the Assistant Director of Education and HR at NSF, who coined the term. Previously, NSF had used SMET, which is definitely not as catchy.
No.
SMET. Yeah, how do you say that? SMET or SMET?
SMET.
While we're on the topic of Dr. Romilly, some fun facts about her is that she was the first female president of Portland State University, and a majority of her career has been focused on securing practical opportunities for women and minorities to participate in education and sciences. Her latest work focuses on articulating policies and practices focused on equity and inclusion in post-secondary education. She's a really interesting woman, and just the fact that she coined STEM is enough, but then to find that she's done all these other things too is really cool.
For sure.
So the term STEM has a lot of branches now too. Some people say STEAM and add in art or agriculture or applied to make it say applied mathematics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, some say STREAM and add in robotics, or reading, or recreation, or the worst sounding version, STEAM, which adds in an H for humanities.
Oh, that's not where I thought it was.
Great inclusion, terrible acronym.
Yeah.
So I sat down and I took the letters,
Okay.
and my proposal is to re-acronym that one HAZMET. I don't know. It's not good.
It's better.
Tell us what you think that STEAM should be re-acronymed to. But all those acronyms and fights about what counts as falling under the umbrella aren't really pertinent to what I want to talk about. I'll leave that for grant writers and government officials. What I really want to focus on is the Dr. Romilly special, STEM. So if I could boil STEM down to its essence, what is it? Well, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics are all interesting because they not only are the answer, but they're also the question. So let me explain. Let's say you want to understand how water moves through your backyard. This desire or interest for understanding likely came from somewhere, a why. In this case, maybe your backyard floods every time it rains. And so if you could understand how it gets there, you might be able to build a mechanism, a dam or a bridge or a levee. Understanding how water moves through your backyard is science. Creating a water-resistant camera setup to capture the water movement in rainstorms is technology. Understanding water flow is mathematics. And creating a levee parallel to your back fence is engineering. That's STEM.
Oh, wow.
It's finding a question, being curious about the answer, and then using data to answer the question, in hopes that it may in some ways benefit the underlying larger picture question or system or framework. So in that, how do engineering and technology fit? I think that the thing that they have in common is that they are practical applications of the other two, science and mathematics. Science and mathematics generally ask the question, why? But in different ways. Science uses observations and data analysis to test hypotheses about why using practical, grounded, real-life data. Meanwhile, mathematics uses observations and data analysis to make logical sense of our physical reality through providing practical rules and symbols to demonstrate clear meaning. Think, for instance, of the Fibonacci sequence, or otherwise known as the Pingala sequence. Many don't know that the Liber Abaci, or the Book of Calculation by Leonardo Pisa, whose nickname was Fibonacci, was actually just a book describing the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. The sequence was ascribed to Fibonacci due to the fact that it was one of the first Western books to describe it, but its origin is actually traced back to an Indian mathematician named Pingala, who analyzed Sanskrit poetry mathematically and lived around 300 BCE. About 900 years before Fibonacci.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, right? Yeah, so he took Sanskrit poetry and he tried to figure out the scheme by using a relatively new at the time number-based binary system. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, really interesting. Cool. Anyways, back to the Pingala sequence. It's, if you don't know, 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. So it builds on itself. So 1 plus 1 is 2, 1 plus 2 is 3, 2 plus 3 is 5. This mathematical recurrence relation appears often in nature, from human anatomy to pine cones to seashells. It's an example of how science and mathematics worked together to observe a pattern that appeared naturally, and then how to explain how it works through formulas and derivations. So if engineering and technology are the practical applications of two practical fields of observation and sense-making, how are they different? To me, if science and math ask the question why, engineering and technology answer the question how. They take the fundamentals of science and mathematics and build on them, using their observations, theorems, and laws to craft new things. Going back to the Pingala sequence, it's been used in electrical engineering to inspire turbines, which are things to extract energy from moving. Think wind power, the big wind turbines.
Sure.
It's been used in civil engineering to design buildings, such as the Parthenon in ancient Greece. And it's been used in computer engineering to optimize search trees. There's a thing called the Fibonacci heap that amortizes time complexities to decrease run times of algorithms. Another example of all of this kind of converging is the arch, one of the first truly innovative engineering feats. Like I noted earlier, the first arches were first designed by Mesopotamians over 4,000 years ago, and as EBSCO states, were often used to, quote, support small structures such as storerooms and underground drains, close quote. They were created as an answer to the question, how do I put things underground without the roof collapsing? And as technology progressed, folks around the world kept iterating on this concept until Romans made a breakthrough using wedge-shaped stones and a keystone centrally placed at the top to distribute weight. The Romans wanted to enhance the existing arch to be able to do things like create their aqueducts and build massive public spaces. And they used simple geometry like the classic semicircle to engineer. I guess my final thoughts on this long ramble are that science and mathematics are the foundations for engineering and technology. If I was making a Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but instead it's Prem's hierarchy of STEM, I'd say it would be observation as the foundation, mathematics as the next layer up, science as the next one after that, and engineering and technology at the top. I feel like I'm seeing a lot of technology recently that seems to have forgotten that it's tied to these other fields. Without a foundation of observation and math and science, without asking the question why, the how rings hollow. So that's all I had.
That's really cool.
Thanks.
That's awesome. I think that should be a t-shirt. Prem's hierarchy of needs. STEM.
Prem's hierarchy of STEM.
Yeah, Prem's hierarchy. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that makes me think of those. I get all those ads for making an AI can make you an app, and I'm like, that's not a need. I mean, I'm sure some people need it, but it's not. I don't need it.
Well, I've gotten that ad, and in it he says, if you can't think of an idea for an app, use AI to come up with an idea.
Yeah. So it's like not starting at the need, like what you said.
Yeah. It's not asking, what problem do I need to solve? Right?
It's like looking for a... I mean, I guess there is that in advertising where it's like create the problem to solve or whatever, but it's like it's not really...
But that just... Yeah, that goes against like how engineering and technology has just evolved over time, right? It's almost in some ways like bucking the evolution to go, we'll come up with the product and find the solution for it. Like, not to make this anti-AI, but I do feel like that's kind of what's happening with AI is here's the product. We'll just keep trying to explain use cases to you until we find some way that it works.
Yeah. It's almost like taking the engineering part out of the technology part. Yeah, it's interesting. Oh, I was just thinking about the like adding art to that is really interesting. Adding art to STEM, like STEAM.
Yeah, or adding recreation, which I think is really interesting.
What? How was recreation in there?
Well, so here's the thing: if I put on my optimist hat, the answer is that recreation is really important to innovation. It's the reason that we saw things like the Facebook team model where they have open floor plans and they play sand volleyball and they all go out for beers because the recreation is when the innovation happens, right? You need play in order to think of fun things.
That would be really good for STEM programs because I feel like if you're an engineering kid, like it's taking up a lot of your world. Yeah,
you need some time to just play and like figure out what problems there are in the world, right?
Okay, that's interesting because I thought what you were saying was the innovation would happen for the recreation, you know? Like,
well, maybe.
You go camping and your tent sucks and you design a better tent. I don't know.
Maybe, but I do think that's part of it, right? Because like, let's say, I mean, we do that all the time. We're playing a game and we go, well, it'd be better if we had a card holder. It'd be better if we had this, right? Yeah. Like in the play, you realize that there are questions to be asked. if I put my pessimist hat on, it's because there is a lot of grant funding that goes towards STEM programs. And so if you can categorize yourself underneath that, you can apply for those grants and those resources.
Well, I'm not going to argue with art being under that then. That needs more funding anyway.
So I think that some of those adding stuff in, like STEAM with humanity, STEAM, I think that it's probably a way to be like, no, we should qualify for grant funding too. And so it's like a weird workaround to try to get funds, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I do think, once again, it's like, if I put my optimist hat on, I see the benefit, right? Like if, and I've seen this with engineers and with people who work in the technologies, like if you don't have a good understanding of the humanities, if you don't have a good understanding of art, if you don't know how people actually operate in a certain way, you can't come up for a solution to that, because it might be what's technically the best, but it's not the most usable.
Yeah.
So I do think like having humanities or having reading or having humanities, some of these other ones that have ended up under STEAM, it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that.
No.
I had a teacher, I just took one class from him one time, but he told me, he talked a lot about how engineering and art aren't that different. He talked a lot about how, like, you can make a bridge that works perfectly and people will hate it because it's ugly, and like so you have to bring some art in to your engineering brain to like mix it in different form, different amounts depending on what you're making. But you know, like you look at buildings as a huge technical feat of engineering, but they also make them look pleasing. So it's like
right.
It needs to be in there in some ways.
Yeah, I think that's why the iPhone took off so quickly. Not only was it useful and people could inherently understand the use, but it was pretty. Like people wanted to pick it up. They wanted to play with it. They wanted to see the apps, you know?
Yeah.
It has to be functional, but there's a part of it that is aesthetics that you have to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. That's cool, eh?
Thanks.
Okay, so
time to roll for next week.
I get so nervous about this part.
I get really excited.
Yeah.
But then I feel a little sad because I like know what I want.
Okay, yeah. As it always goes, we're going to roll 2 d20s each, and that will tell us what topics to do. Which one are you going to roll?
I kind of want to roll this one.
Like this guy. Oh, I want this guy.
Okay. Are you going to roll the same one twice?
Yeah, I'll roll the same one twice.
Okay, I'll roll the same one twice, too.
Okay.
All right, you go first.
All right. I don't know what I'm hoping for, but I know what I'm not hoping for.
19, true crime.
Oh, that's a good one for me. I love true crime.
You're going to have so much fun with that.
Yeah, that's going to go depending on... I hope I get animal true crime.
14, hobbies.
Hobbies. Okay. Hobbies of true crime hobbies.
True crime hobbies. People who just like to kill for fun.
I was going to say any serial killer.
All right, I'm going to go now.
All right, good luck.
9. Religion. Yes. Oh, I'm so excited about that.
Yes.
Okay. 6. History.
Interesting.
Another broad one.
That is pretty broad.
I got a really broad one again this week. Okay, so yours is...
True crime hobbies.
And mine is religion and history.
Okay. Tune in next week. Like and subscribe so you catch the next one.
Bye!